Welcome to day 5 of Vibe Coding a app to $10,000 a month in revenue. Today's revenue is $0, but I want to show you some of the apps that we have built so far. So we are building a knowledge-based designer or knowledge-based platform, which allows you to build courses or upload courses, and then there's an AI knowledge hub that can answer customers' questions. So we have this course builder, which we built in lesson, I think it was day 2 or day 3. So we can go ahead and we can create courses. Yesterday we did some basic updates where we can actually take a Loom video URL directly. My internet here is really slow. But you can take a Loom video URL, copy that, and then you can come into here, add a new lesson, paste in the Loom URL, and then it will go ahead, find the name of it, and then when we add it, it will transcribe it and add it to our knowledge base. So you can see here, inside our knowledge base, we have various folders, and the folders are essentially courses. So we have like the feature tutorials. We can come into that, we can see the modules, and then we can see each lesson that has been uploaded for that module. And obviously we have a full functioning working database for this as well. You can see basically for this we have each of the lessons, and the lessons have then been indexed. So what happens is on the back end we're chunking that, and everything has been designed and planned with CodeSpring. And if you would like to follow along, then grab yourself a CodeSpring account with a link down below. But all of the plan of everything that we're building has been designed in this full mind map here, which I'll show you a little bit more as we go on. So it chunks everything, but this is really the fun part, because in yesterday's part we basically just built the knowledge hub. So I'll give you a walkthrough. I built this CodeSpring knowledge hub, which is an example one that we're using. So here you can see this is the template knowledge hub that we've created. So you can actually come in and you can select, I want to have certain lessons in there. So at the moment I've added in 2 lessons that show up. And obviously if we come into like the feature tutorials, we can see there's 6 different lessons that we can watch. We can come home and we can actually customize the color. So if we want to, we can have it like green or yellow or blue or whatever color we want. And then we can actually, this is a really fun part, is I can ask specific questions. So this is essentially what I've done, is I've taken the course material from CodeSpring, and all of the information and courses that we have in here, and I'm starting to upload them into this knowledge hub. So I can ask a question like, how do I integrate Cursor with CodeSpring? And what it will do is it will find all of the lessons that mention this, and then what it will do is it will use them as references, give me a step-by-step guide on how to do that thing, and it will also recommend me a video, and then I can go ahead and watch the specific guides for each specific reference as well. So in this video what we're going to do is basically add some sort of caching system, because you can see this takes a little bit of time to figure out an answer. But you can see here, before starting, ensure you have both Cursor and CodeSpring accounts set up. If you don't have accounts, visit their respective websites and create them. Log into your CodeSpring account and create a new project. Next, open your Cursor application. You'll need to navigate to the integration settings in Cursor, look for the option to add a new integration, and it's basically taking all of these steps here directly from the videos. So for example here, right, in Cursor, look for the new integration, usually found in the settings or integration section of the app. You can see the system prompt or the prompting. We need to improve a little bit because it's kind of hallucinating a bit. But if we click this, it then shows us setting up the Cursor MCP. So we have a guide on exactly how to do that. It's pulled in that specific guide, and we can see the matched content. So this is the section of the transcript for that specific video that it's used. So we know, okay, this is what it's used to answer that specific question. Here, once the data is fetched, you'll see a confirmation of the integration was successful. Again, I've just updated, actually, I think I've made things worse. I updated the system prompt here, but I think it's actually broken things. So what we'll probably do in this is we'll probably add a better system prompt. And then you can basically see what we do is we reference specific videos. So setting up the Cursor MCP, and then it has the like the main video that it recommends, and obviously the sources down here at the bottom. If I say something like CodeSpring with Lovable, and there's some UI glitches that we need to fix, it will then search for any videos that we mention, like how to integrate CodeSpring with Lovable. And then, you know, obviously if I phrase this as a question, it would then answer exactly how to do that one thing. And it's using the specific videos from these lessons here. Now, basically what this does is it makes it much easier to train people on how to use our software. If we click on this, we can see how to connect CodeSpring and Lovable. It has found the guide for exactly how to do that, which is about a minute long, and you can see the matched content. So essentially, it is a knowledge-based platform that can answer questions based on the knowledge and also show you videos, and it automatically transcribes everything from when you automatically upload it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to come into Cursor, and we're just going to update the system prompt. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, let's something like, I'm going to grab this. I'm going to come to cursor. I'm going to say the system prompt that you've created has introduced a lot of hallucinations. So for example, we're not actually, or the AI isn't actually reading the queried response. I want to make sure that when we query, using obviously the vector embeddings, have a look at the CodeSpring product requirement docs, which has explained how we've actually built this. You can see it for our Knowledge Hub FAQ. So the feature Knowledge Hub, we have a PRD for the front end and also the back end for the Knowledge Hub. You can read that PRD and it'll kind of explain a little bit more detail on how we've built things. But basically the problem that I'm having right now is I ask a question like how to integrate CodeSpring with Cursor, and the responses are far too complex, and we made the system prompt a little bit too beefy. So it says, for example, ensure that you have both a CodeSpring and Cursor account set up. If you haven't created one, visit their respective platforms. I mean, that's just a waste of time for users. Obviously, they have an account because they're watching inside our platform. Log into CodeSpring, create a new project or select an existing one. Make sure your project data is organized and ready for integration. That line there, make sure all your project data is organized and ready for integration. It's just adding additional fluff for no reason. Next, open your Cursor application. Navigate to the section where you can integrate external tools. This is also incorrect because when you come into Cursor, there isn't a section called integrations. So it says in step 4, in the integration section, look for the option to add CodeSpring. That doesn't exist. You go to Tools and MCP, and then you add an MCP. Now that information is inside the transcript, right? So for example, for number 4, I will give you the information on basically, this is what it said. And also you can see here, if I give you the reference for it, this is the matched content that it's using for that reference. And you can see it says this project is in the CodeSpring organization workspace. Obviously, it's then it basically, I think the way that we are, whatever we're doing for the querying, I want to improve it because it's not finding the correct information. And also the lines that it's using, like the text that it's using for each reference, isn't necessarily correct, right? So I think we need to, I don't know if we can increase like the K value, but the number of chunks that we pull in and how similar the search needs to be needs to be tightened up a little bit to remove the hallucinations. We'll send that through. Basically, I think what's happening is you can see here we have 8 various sources, and it's always using 8 sources. I think the problem is the sources are incorrect some of the time, or it's trying to pull in too many sources, and if those sources aren't correct, then obviously we're going to run into problems. So for now, let's just see what's coming up here. It says, let me check the CodeSpring PRDs. I see the issue. The system prompt I created is encouraging the AI to fill in gaps, which leads to hallucinations. Yeah, similarity threshold is also quite low, 0.25. So tighten the system prompt. So it's updating the system prompt and increase the similarity. Now we have created an API route here, which was planned. If we come over to CodeSpring here, we can see if we come to backend how it's designed to basically get things set up. So we can have a public REST API. Any server actions that are needed. All of this stuff has been generated by CodeSpring because what we did here is we basically drafted out what we want it to do, and then it converted those plans into detailed product requirement docs. So what we're hopefully going to see now is we're going to come back to our knowledge base, and we're going to take the same question and we'll test this again. One thing that I want to add in this video is going to be caching as well. So I'm going to come to CodeSpring. And I think one thing we're going to do is we're going to say, I want to work on a caching functionality inside the knowledge base, the knowledge hub. So at the moment, right, what we're doing is the product requirement docs that I've attached in the chat are essentially explaining how the querying works. I think what we want to do is we want to create a new feature called Knowledge Hub Caching. And the Knowledge Hub Caching is basically going to be a system where if I ask a question, then what I want it to do is, if it's good, like once the question's been asked, it will cache it. So then the next time when I ask the AI, instead of turning the text, right, into embeddings, querying the vector database, sending all of that back to the AI to generate a response and show it, I want it this time to take my question, check the cache to see if we've already asked the same question or a similar question, and then if it's very, very similar, then I want to show the cached answer to have quicker responses. But I'm not sure how to set the caching up. Presumably it's the same system where we have the same sort of a vector database, but maybe we need a new table, or is there another platform to use for caching with quicker responses? Because I think the problem with the caching system is if we have to continually query and then get the vector embeddings and all of that stuff, it can still take a lot of time. The only difference there is once we got the vector embeddings, we can check against the knowledge base. So here we can have the knowledge base embeddings. So essentially, what's happening is we have these vector files here, right? And these vector files are basically what we're doing is we're turning text into numbers, and then we check the numbers of our message. So, for example, this could be well, the way it looks, right, is you have something like an array, so it could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? That's my question. Okay, so if we put here question is this, and then it looks through these answers. So there's answer that goes like 7, 8, 9, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, right? And what we're looking for is an answer that has a similar set of numbers. Okay, so if we have that, then maybe another one that goes 1, 2, 5, 6, 7. Okay, that's pretty close to this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Another answer that goes 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 is even closer to our question. So what we're essentially looking for is, if I ask this question, is there an answer that is very, very similar? If it is, then show these ones, don't show this one. It's not quite accurate on how that works, but that's the best way I can use to describe it. So what we're going to do now, we're going to come back to the browse, we're going to ask the same question, and we're going to see if the similarity threshold boosting it is better. Max sources is going to be reduced to 6 to make it more focused, and the temperature is going to be reduced to make it more deterministic. So here it says how to integrate CodeSpring with Cursor. Go to Cursor, then navigate to the tools and select MCP and add the integration. Enter your CodeSpring organization workspace name to connect. So click on this and we can see it's pulled in obviously the correct video. Enter your CodeSpring organization workspace name and connect. This is also incorrect. So I think we've been too strict here on the responses it's creating. So we're going to come back in and we're going to say we're definitely getting sort of slightly more accurate, but I think we've been too strict. So I put the same question in, how to integrate CodeSpring with Cursor, and it came back with only a 2-step plan. Go to Cursor, then navigate to the tools and select MCP and add the integration. That is correct, but I want to make sure that's not coming through because I've told you, like, I want to make sure that's not hard-coded into the system prompt. Then it says step 2, enter your CodeSpring organization workspace and name to connect. That is incorrect. I think part of this is because what we need to really do is have a better system where if I say how to integrate CodeSpring with Cursor, maybe what we do is we fetch all of the embeddings for how to do this, and I don't know how we're summarizing them, but we fetch all of the chunks that are similar. And then what we do is we get the AI to read through it and then analyze it and figure out step by step how to actually do something. If we're using multiple tools, for example, which order do we use things? And also if we're using, like when we say here, step 2, enter your CodeSpring organization workspace name and connect, it's possible that, I'm not sure what language model we're using for this as well, but maybe we use a better language model. Let's have a look here. GPT-4o mini, so we can probably use something like GPT-5. So we can come GPT models. So they've got GPT-5 Nano, fastest, most cost-efficient version. GPT-5 Mini, faster, cost-efficient. So we're going to use GPT-5 Mini. Use this model here. Yeah, let's just see what happens just by boosting the model, if that works. Okay, so let's see what's going on here. Oh wow, a lot has been created. So knowledge base indexing, knowledge base hub. I don't know if it added a new feature. So knowledge hub caching. That seems to have been created. So caching design notes. So we have 14 Kanban tasks queued for this feature. I want to say here, what are the tools we're going to use for caching? Can you just walk me through this so I understand how to actually set this up? I'll be using Superbase vector embeddings. The most important thing here is to make sure it's quick and efficient. Let's let this finish as well. And actually, here, let's just read through. And one thing I would recommend when you're using CodeSpring is don't just take everything as gospel. Always read through and check what it's doing. You can see that you use 788 credits, which means we probably read a lot of context from the mind map, and we're also using external tools as well. Redis in memory. Interesting. So it's saying to use Redis, Redis, I don't know how you pronounce it. Semantic store, same thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and say, so you look like you've used Redis. I'm not sure why. What's the benefit of using that over, at the moment we're storing all of our vectors inside Superbase, PG vector. How much faster is Redis? Just in terms of adding in like an extra tech stack is going to be more complicated. Is there a way we can add basic caching with our Superbase PG vector at the moment, just so we can test how quick it is? And then if it isn't quick enough, then we can move it over. What's the limiting factor? My imagination here is telling me that actually the limiting factor is generating the answers with AI based on the chunks that we've given it, rather than checking against the vector database. So can we update it? Can you just double check? Search the web as well and see what you think is the best option for caching. It's got to be scalable, but easily, implementable for our MVP. My preference is if we can make Superbase PG vector work at the point where it's just not going to be really slow and laggy, then we could do that to start off with. But if not, let me know. And now, let's just see what this has come up with. So, prompt needs to be a balance, not hallucinating, but also properly analysing the transcript in context. So we've updated it to GPT-5 Mini, which should theoretically be better. Let me get rid of that. Also increase the snippet length so the AI has more context. I didn't realise we were cutting that down. And it's just a matter of tweaking and tailoring. So I'm going to come back. Let's regenerate that response. And this is the other thing, is like figuring this out before we start using caching. Looks like there's been an error. Okay, so it looks like max tokens isn't something that we can do with GPT-5 Mini. I don't know if there's like a GPT-5 Mini API docs. I think actually we'll say here we can put use the OpenAI docs to read how the GPT-5 Mini model works. They keep changing whether or not you can actually change temperature, those sorts of things. Right, what's CodeSpring doing? Main latency is usually language model generation, not vector search. PG vector with proper indexing typically returns in tens of milliseconds. Okay. For MVP, you can keep using everything in Postgres. Okay. Okay, then for now, can you update and change this note and then regenerate the requirement docs for this feature to use PG vector? You can have a look at how the rest of our app has been built and how we figured out PG vector by looking at the, I think it was the knowledge hub feature. I'll also add that to context so you can see how we designed it there, and design us a system for that as well. What at the moment we have is an API route that does the searching, and it's essentially a route that will basically query, do all the querying, the vector embeddings, and then give it to the LLM. It may be that we want to add the caching as like a step in that as well. And we'll let that get on with its thing. So how to integrate with cursor. I found relevant sources but couldn't generate a summary. Did it fix it? Keep. How to integrate CodeSpring with cursor. Let's just make sure that here we scroll down so we can see if there's any errors. Let's refresh. To integrate CodeSpring with cursor. Same again. It looks like temp is also not valid. That's annoying. I don't want to use GPT-5 though because it's far too powerful for something like this. It's going to also be quite slow and expensive. So let's just see if this works. Also, like, I haven't actually added that much knowledge to the Knowledge Hub yet, so it may be we have something that says, look, please add more knowledge or something like that. Okay, so in the CodeSpring MCP setup, choose your client and select cursor as the client type. When prompted for the project location, indicate that the project is in CodeSpring. Yeah, it's kind of got the right idea, but I don't think it's using enough chunks. So I'm going to say in here, can we actually now add some logging for the API route? Because what I want to see is, I think what's actually happening is when we're generating the response, it's either not using enough chunks and it hasn't got enough knowledge or context, or it's a memory or knowledge issue inside our app. We haven't actually uploaded enough knowledge to help it figure out how to do these things. So can we spit out and see what chunks are coming through? Also, it's no longer in the system prompt, it's no longer actually creating references for the videos anymore. While it's doing that, let's just come back into here and see what's just planned out. So, done, updated the caching notes to use PG only, no Redis. Okay, let's just come down here and see what it's come up with. Postgres only on Supabase. Cool. So it looks like it's actually figured out a pretty good plan for that as well. Now what we'll do at some point is we are overhauling the Kanban system in here. At the moment we're not going to bother with Kanban tasks just because it's a brand new feature. It's kind of in beta. But that will basically break down this into separate tasks. I don't want to start building the caching though until we can kind of figure out why this isn't super accurate using the correct information. Then looks like it's adding some logging. So we're going to come back into here and we're going to send this through. So similarity 60%, 54%, 53%. Okay, in the CodeSpring MCP setup, choose your client and select cursor as the client. Copy the command URL that CodeSpring shows for the integration. Option A, paste the command into the URL cursor chat and send it. Option B, open a terminal. This is actually correct now. When prompted in cursor, indicate that the project is in the CodeSpring organization. Yep, cursor will fetch the project structure and product requirement docs, and it will write the latest versions of each project requirement doc to a .CodeSpring. This is correct. Why is that happening now? Okay, so this is the actual logging of what chunks it's used, and and how it's actually used them. The responses that were actually generated this time were perfectly correct. The problem is, as you can see in the screenshot that I've given you, it's not actually referencing, it's not including the references in the response as well for me to click on and watch the videos for each of the responses. And also, I'm not sure why, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. This is why we're going to have caching, so you can edit the answers basically. Trying to find the system prompt. Okay, so this is the how to answer transcript. You're a knowledge-based assistant. Your job is to carefully read and analyze the provided transcripts, then exactly step-by-step answer. How to analyze. Read through all the transcript excerpts carefully. Identify the actual sequence of actions being described. Pay attention to specific UI elements, menu names, and terminology. Look for cause and effect. When you do X, then Y happens. This is good. Piece together the complete workflow. What to include. The actual steps described in the transcripts in the correct order. Specific details like menu names, buttons. That's fine, but that could be... that's probably going to be a problem. What happens after each action? 3 to 8 steps depending on the complexity. What to never do. Don't add generic setup steps not mentioned, like make sure you have an account. Don't invent intermediate steps that aren't described in the transcripts. Don't use different terminology than what's in the transcripts. Don't add helpful tips or prerequisites not explicitly stated in the transcripts. If the transcripts describe a speaker doing something, I'm going to click on, convert that into instructional response. Yeah, okay, so I think that's fine. I'm pretty happy with the system prompts. I don't think it's a system prompt issue. I think it's muddying, muddied sort of data. And obviously don't forget, like when you have a video like this, a lot of the tutorial is filler words and fluff. So maybe we want to clean the data somehow, but I don't know. And let's just regenerate it and see if it comes back again correctly. I can't remember in this last one, what do we do? It may have updated the system prompt a little bit more. So we're just going to keep running this test and seeing if it works. So this is what the language model has come up with. Copy the single prompt command shown in CodeSpring MCP setup. The process just requires you copy one single prompt. Choose your client in the MCP setup. Do you know what I think we need to do? I think we need to create in the Knowledge Hub, a system prompt area, which is customizable for the user. Because what's happening is I think we want to have like the ability to have in the Knowledge Hub where we can add snippets of like, here's how to do things, and also a system prompt, like important URLs, those sorts of things. So what we're going to do, so let's come to the chat here, and we're going to create a new chat. We're going to get the Knowledge Hub, add this to context. In the Knowledge Hub, I want you to update or add some new notes, because what we're going to do is we actually want to build inside the settings in the Knowledge Hub, we want to build a sort of system prompt area, which allows us to, when we're looking at our Knowledge Hubs, we can actually add system prompts and more like specific information. So in the left-hand side, we have like some settings like hub name, accent, color, courses. I want to add a settings tab into that, which is like various AI system prompt settings. And I think in our database where we have our knowledge base hubs, we should have a new column in there to save the system prompt and extra information, or maybe just save the whole system prompt as like some sort of JSON file or something. Things I think we need are going to be, basic information like system prompt information on how you want the AI to respond, and then we will also want to have any specific URLs or emails or important information that people can access. So, for example, like support emails as well. Can we add those little features into the settings? And then also I want to update let's just do that for now. And then what we'll do is we'll update the querying system here to then use that system prompt as well. So we will add some basic parameter in our system prompt for the answer generation. Sorry, not in the answer generation, it'll be probably in the API, which will be in here. We'll have like a parameter where it pulls in, and when we send a message, it pulls in the system prompt as well. And then that way what we can do is we can add in things like our support email, we can add in like the MCP URL for this specific thing, and then we can add specific settings which are very important in the system, and that way we should get a much better result. So it's added this AI system prompt settings. Awesome, I think that looks good. That's going to be in like the sort of settings bar in the dashboard courses /hubs when we're actually looking at the hub. So we have hub name, accent, color, and selecting for the courses. I want to have a settings tab in there as well. Make sure that's what we do for the UI. And also, if you look at the requirement docs for this, which I'll add actually to the context, you can see how we've got the querying set up. I want to make sure that our when somebody sends a message to the hub, it'll, while it's doing the querying and before it sends it off to the language model, it uses that hub specific system prompt as well. But I want this to be done in a scalable way, so we're not always pulling in, in every message we send, always having to search for the system prompt for that hub. Is it automatically added in a scalable way, or it's pulled once for that user session and then it's stored? Because we could have like 100 users all asking questions at the same time through one knowledge hub. So I want to make sure that the way that we pull in the system prompts is also scalable. Every single prompt, each prompt will have its own system prompt. Each hub will have its own system prompt. This is the fun part I like of development, which is, okay, we've got the basic thing working, how can we improve things? One thing I notice a lot of people do is when they start designing and building with CodeSpring and Cursor is they'll have the basic MVP set up like this, and then they'll instantly try and get users for it. The problem is at this stage, what you'll realize is a lot of the problems you're going to have, complaints from customers, will be, something doesn't work correctly. And we get it a lot with CodeSpring. We've got thousands of users. But what we tend to notice is, because the way AI works, AI will sometimes hallucinate and it will make things up. It's really hard to rein it in. One prompt can mean 10 different things to the AI. Like if you go to ChatGPT and you send like the same message 10 times, you'll get 10 different responses. That's part of the problem with building AI first apps like this, is it's very hard to train it and rein it in, and giving the user some ability to create various controls is what's going to help quite a lot. So one thing we can also consider doing is basically adding in temperature controls as well. So maybe we don't use something like GPT-5 Mini. We can figure it out from there. Right, so it looks like what it's done is I gave it these requirement docs. And one thing to know with CodeSpring is if you click and then add to context, it does a better job, because you can basically tell it to focus in on one specific thing. So it's updated the front-end requirement doc and the back-end requirement doc. So what we're going to do is we're going to push this to GitHub, so push and commit. And then what we'll do is we'll import this, and I think, I'm just double checking this, I think the MCP now, we don't seem to be having as many connection issues as we were having yesterday and the day before because of the new update that we pushed. So every time this disconnects, it now reconnects, which makes a huge difference. Let's just go to GitHub as well and make sure. So I think it should have, now it's pushed it. So that's saved on there. What I want you to do now is read the CodeSpring MCP for the Knowledge Hub. We've actually updated the retrieval system, so we've also added in some new notes. There's a note on the AI system prompt settings notes and AI system prompt implementation tasks. I want you to read those tasks and those notes, because we're actually adding in a system prompt section into the app. So I want you to read those requirement docs, pull them in, and then add it into our app, but also with a focus on scalability. So we are, big focus on scalability, and I think it may explain how we want to add a new, we want to create and make sure that the database works. So I think what we'll probably do is inside the database, I think we designed it so the knowledge base hubs will have a new section where we basically store the system prompt information. But when we are pulling in the system prompt, if you look at the requirement docs, it should explain information on how to make it scalable. So if we have like 1,000 people or 100 people sending messages to the knowledge base hub when it's embedded onto our website, it's not in every single message always trying to re-pull in or recheck for or re-find the system prompt. It's already there. Actually, let's give this and say, can we also design a database product requirement doc to make sure that we update the existing table in our database, I think for the knowledge base underscore hub as well. So we're going to put in this, and what we're going to do is we're going to push some updates at some point to CodeSpring. I want to make the database design a bit easier, because the database design shouldn't be specific to each feature like this. We should have, I think we'll have like a way where you can visualize your database, and then it will have, you'll have like one big requirement doc or a couple of requirement docs, but it knows full context of what your database looks like. Because updating requirement docs in this, it can't pull in information on what your existing structure is in your database, which isn't really ideal. But let's come into here and say, I also want you to read, we have a database product requirement doc. Now it may not be accurate because we have updated it. It should know and have context on how our database currently looks, but I think we're going to be updating the knowledge base hub, which is this one, knowledge base hub schema. Okay, so let's just send that through, and I'm quite excited about this feature because this will mean inside here we have various settings, and then we can give the AI for per knowledge base hub some specific prompting systems that make it more powerful. So I'm going to try and pull in CodeSpring MCP. So the first test I've done of the CodeSpring MCP since we've pushed the update. So we're going to allow this MCP, and then what it will do is it will pull in all the system data and the prompts and the project requirement docs and just all the context of what we've built so far and what we're trying to build and how that then changes. What this is doing is getting the requirement docs. So we're going to grab the requirement docs. So here we go, it's now pulled in, so it's got a lot of all the PRDs. And now what it's going to do is it's going to find the PRDs that are specific to this feature that we're trying to build. So you can see here we can actually scroll through and look. So front-end PRD update knowledge hub, so we're using the knowledge hub product requirement doc. That's perfectly fine, and then we'll have a database product requirement doc for the knowledge hub, and we also have the back-end one. Now if there's any conflicts in the requirement docs to what we have in the code, Cursor usually figures it out. And now what it's going to do is hopefully build that feature for us. And the benefit of all this being we really don't have to spend much time prompting the AI going back and forth. We've basically created a very, very detailed guide on exactly how we want to get our app built. CodeSpring knows how our whole app is structured, and we'll figure out, okay, well, based on what we have so far in our code, let's go ahead and build these specific features. And also with CodeSpring, we can do research, and it can look at our code base and say, okay, based on your code base, I recommend we do this, for example. Now, we did start figuring out the caching system as well, so we'll probably go ahead and we'll build the caching design as well in a bit as well. So I've retrieved all the PRDs, now I understand the requirements, database, AI settings, JSON, column, and knowledge base hubs. Okay, so it's going to add a new column to the knowledge base hubs. So here, we should be able to have the settings for that, and then we can then use that to extract scalability, use session-based caching to avoid fetching the system prompt at every message, in-memory, session snapshots, version-based invalidation. So this, I'm hoping, will work, which should basically mean, right, if somebody is, so this here, what you see in this section, will be embedded onto a website. So when I log in and view it, then it will have cached the system prompt on my computer, and then if you log in on yours, it will cache it on yours. API endpoints, initialize the session, modified. It's going to modify the API. It's going to modify this. And it knows how to do all of this because CodeSpring has got full context. So on CodeSpring, when we start planning and designing things, sometimes feeding in a bit of information from, file paths and those sorts of things can help. At some point also I want to add in, I'll probably add my GitHub URL as well, and that'll probably help us. So we're just going to let this finish building, and then we'll come back and we'll test it. And what we should see in the UI is some updated settings panel here, and we should see an updated column in here as well. Cool. Looks like we are underway. So what it's done is it's basically created a plan from the CodeSpring requirement docs. Part of the reason why I love using CodeSpring alongside Cursor is because CodeSpring's plan mode adds a whole lot of context that otherwise wouldn't be there. And then basically Cursor can look at it and say, okay, well, if there's anything missing, make sure it's all correct with the current code base, and then it will go ahead and figure out how to put it in. Now, I'm not saying there's going to be perfect code, right? There's going to be issues. It's AI code. It's just the nature of it. But for the most part, every time I've planned a feature inside CodeSpring, generated requirement docs, given it to Cursor, it has then one-shotted it, and it's made it much easier. And then I can go back and I can keep CodeSpring up to date, rather than all of this stuff here, this planning that we've created. I mean, look how much planning is involved in the knowledge base hub. All of this planning, it would have just been sent as multiple messages to the AI to code, and every message would have written code, and then we would have made changes and gone back and updated things, and that would have left a whole lot of dead code and inefficiencies. Whereas by doing it like this, we plan first, we figure it all out. CodeSpring then basically takes all of this stuff with context to the rest of our build and makes like a very efficient requirement doc for us to build. So what we can see now is it's trying to migrate these things, so we should see here a new table appear in our database. Well, wait to let me scroll. In a second, so I can't remember what it was called. Access tokens, allowed domains, AI config. Okay, so this here is basically the system settings. So we come into here, AI settings. Let's just run that. Okay, so we have system prompt, answer first style. There's some various changes it's added in here, which I'm not particularly happy with. We need to clean up the UI on that, and I think maybe I want to make just this sidebar collapsible, like what we have in CodeSpring. It is a collapsible sidebar, and then we can make this so we can stretch out and make it bigger if we need to. So let's just do that here. Can we make the sidebar collapsible, so it's automatically collapsed, and then when I hover over it, it opens up and expands. And also the icons, so when it collapses, we'll only see the icons, and when whichever one's obviously selected will be, have its like little highlight. But then if I hover my mouse over them, there'll be a little tooltip, which will kind of look like what I've put in the screenshot, which will basically show, okay, here's what you're hovering over. That's not what we want. So we know, okay, for example, this is what the button does when we actually hover over it. Okay, right, let's see what this has done. So it's added hub settings cache, that's fine. So we have quite a few APIs that it seems to be creating. And I'm not sure, I just want to go through and make sure that we're not overdoing it and over-engineering it. Now this is now going to update and make our sidebar automatically collapse, and then we can go ahead and we can play around with this stuff as well. Okay, so the sidebar now automatically hovers and disappears, which is quite nice. And then if I hover over it, it looks like it's a bit buggy. Okay, let's put that in here. So the sidebar automatically collapses. The problem is when I pull away, it shows all the little things that I've hovered over. So maybe we get rid of those little tooltips for now, because actually I just thought about it is when I hover over it, it automatically expands anyway. So we don't really need to have those little tooltips appear. Also, sometimes I'll hover over it and then I'll move my mouse away and it won't collapse. I'll move my mouse away into the middle of the screen a bit, and then I'll have to kind of hover over it again and then move it away for it to collapse and know that I've moved away. So it seems a little bit laggy or buggy with the way it moves and appears. I'll try and give you some of the console logs. I don't know if that's going to help, but Okay, while that's doing that, let's just have a look and see what this is built. So we have the AI settings area. So system prompt, answer first, step-by-step guide. So it has predefined system prompts that we can use, for example, which is quite good. Different response style. And obviously it's now doing some updates, so we'll come back to that in a second. Okay, so let's see if the hover seems to be a little bit better. I'm happy with that. Now what I'm going to do is clean up the UI for the settings section, so you can see it looks a bit weird. Ooh, that's my face. I want to clean up the UI a little bit for the AI settings. It's a little bit confusing. I just don't like the style of everything. It looks really weird, and also it's hard to know that the important resources, for example, is a drop down or it's a button or it's some sort of view. And I want to use, at the moment, if you look at the front end skills file, you can see that we have the front-end skills.md file. You can see how we're organizing colors, like global variables for everything. So make sure we're using all the global variables for the UI for these changes that we've made. But what I want to make sure is that the AI settings, can we use some of the, I think at the moment our like primary color, or one of our like actual colors is some sort of orange, like what we have in the knowledge base. Can we use that inside the knowledge hub, the sort of editing area for the AI settings? Just clean it up. And at the moment, the input area to enter custom instructions is a little bit long-winded and lengthy. My fear is it's the input box isn't very big. I know we can expand it theoretically. I don't know. It just looks a little bit less intuitive. I'm wondering whether we have like a system prompt builder, so rather than just a massive list of custom instructions, it's types of custom instructions to add in. I like the fact there are example ones that we can use. Let's just run that and see what it does. Okay, so we now have some basic AI behavioral settings in here. That expands, and I think my worry is, as what I've learned with building with CodeSpring, is overdoing the UI, just making it like there's too many buttons to click. So response style, friendly, natural, neutral. So we'll do neutral, instruction behavior, so answer first responses. So start with a direct answer, then provide details. Keep responses brief, step-by-step format. Always cite sources. Okay, let's just come back to cursor. I really like the builder. It really helps people sort of figure out instructions like answer first, step-by-step format, always cite sources. The friendly tone and professional tone shouldn't be in the instruction builder because we have that in the response style. So response style is neutral, friendly, concise, detailed, that sort of thing. I also think there should be some settings as well, you know, where we can, it should be a scrollable thing with some other things that we can write in there. So we could have, for example, a box where we could write some custom instructions as well. And then also we need to have like, so for example, the instruction builder should be a collapsible and the response style should also be collapsible. Make sure that the font weights and the sizing of the headlines and everything makes sense, so it's easy to see where different sections are. And also what I think would be useful is the ability to have like custom, so add in like custom things like email or custom things like, you know, custom links, for example. And we'll send that through as well. And let's just have a look. So just to give you an idea, this has cost $150 so far to create, and we are using basically the top of the line Opus 4.5 language model. We are using a lot, and that's obviously costing us a lot of money to get this thing developed. So, you know, if we were doing this without requirement docs, God knows how much it would have come up with. It would have been already about $300-400. So we're definitely saving a lot of time here. We've only used a few thousand credits, I think. We haven't used loads of credits. Yeah, so like we've only used a few thousand credits. And what we should probably do is we should actually have a thing in here so we can actually see how many credits we've used per project. Okay, so we've got the response styles in here, which we can collapse. Instruction builder, custom instructions. Okay, cool. So let's just come back to here and say, I'm just going to swap this onto just Opus 4.5 just for the front end. I don't think we need the thinking model. So I like this style, but when I have everything expanded, sometimes the boxes sort of exceed the width of their little navigation bar in the settings. So I'll give you a screenshot of what that kind of looks like. Sometimes it sort of pokes out the edge a little bit too much. Also, if we actually have a look at the sidebar, the sort of highlight for the icon isn't centered. These little UI things, which I probably shouldn't be spending so much time on, but instruction builder, I'll tell you what I also want to do is, let's just stop this. Also, what I want to do is, in the drop downs, I want them to automatically be, so whenever I sort of load it up in the AI settings, only the top one for the response style is opened, and then instruction builder is closed. Custom instructions is good, but I want the text box to be stretchable, so I can manually stretch it out. Resources, so for example, support emails is good. Reference links. The reference links, I want to have a reference link and also a description for each reference link. So we can describe, okay, for example, I could add like our MCP URL, or I could add support portal URL or documents or something. Safety and limits, max context and tokens, disallowed topics I think is quite useful as well. And then continue to revert. And the reason we're adding these sorts of things is what I've noticed is when you're, if you have an AI tool, if you don't give people the control to be able to adjust and tweak and change some of the settings that the AI can follow, then what happens is they basically, support goes crazy and they blame you for really bad sort of development practices, basically, because you haven't built things in a way that means they can test. Like if the AI isn't responding properly and they have no control over it, the only thing they can do is email support. Whereas if they have a bit of tweaking control, they can send a message to support and then they can test out and tweak and tailor these things a little bit. Okay, so it looks like it's not going to overflow anymore, so we've got the basic response style. Also, I want all of these icons to be orange, which it hasn't done. All of these icons, I want them to follow the same global variable for the color, which I think at the moment is set to orange. So can we have those also set as well? Because the custom instructions, resources, safety and limits aren't set at the moment. For the resource links, at the moment also when I've got something expanded, if I expand one thing and another thing's expanded, I want it to also auto-collapse the other thing that's expanded to free up space. But when I'm open, like in resources, this whole AI behavior should be scrollable, so I can scroll down. Support email, I think the size of these inputs and boxes are a little bit too small. Now, if you have a look at the global variables and the frontend-skills.md file, basically there's a whole load of systems and processes on how we build the UI to make sure everything's consistent style. Inputs, I think, for example, are one thing that we need to make consistent, because these inputs are a little bit smaller, and it's a bit difficult right now. Like, just look at the bottom of the page, I've got the reference links. When I want to type in the reference links, I can't scroll down and have them in the center of the screen, and we want like the description, for example, to be like a little bit bigger, because at the moment it's just like one input. I can't see a bit more of a description about it. It's hard to see when I put a lot of information in there. Okay, so it's cleaned up the UI. That looks a little bit nicer. If I open this, that collapses. That I do not like. I want to avoid boxes within boxes. Can we avoid having boxes within boxes like this? That just looks really ugly, and it kind of reduces the size and the area that I have to work on. Again, look at the custom instructions, boxes within boxes, just it doesn't work. Same thing like this, you can see here for resources. We're working in too much of a tight, confined space for all of these things. Let's create these. Yeah, I don't know, like it's kind of okay. I think each of these things is iterations on the UI. Make the entire, I think it's part of the problem because I moved away from the thinking model as well. AI settings, I want the entire AI settings to be scrollable. I also prefer the previous drop-down style for these settings, where it was in like their own little cards, but I don't like it where it has like a box within a box. But this style here that I've given you a screenshot of, I don't like that. I want to kind of mimic what we have in the course builder when we're actually inside courses. This kind of style you see in the third screenshot. Okay, I'm going to stop messing around with pointless UI optimizations for now. So we've got response style, instruction builder, Again, the scrolling isn't working. The scrolling isn't working in the AI settings where I have the behavior and I'm setting different behaviors. Like, for example, the instruction builder here, the different things, I can't actually scroll down and see all of the other ones I want. I think that'll do, just have some basic scrolling in each of these. So, for example, I'm going to design now the response format for CodeSpring Knowledge Hub. So I'm going to do friendly, I want to see what that's like, instruction builder, answer first, keep it brief, so step-by-step format, always cite sources, say when you don't know something, that's the other thing. What I've noticed is when I'm in the instruction builder and I click on something I want it to do, like for example admit uncertainty, or use bullet points for example, or whenever it is something I click on, it scrolls all the way to the top every time I select something, which is really annoying. That's fine for now. Custom instructions in here, I'm going to say always explicitly explain where to find buttons or settings inside the app. So inside ours, especially for things like MCP, very specific on where to find integration settings or buttons either inside our app or any apps that they're in specific on where to find integration settings or buttons in. Oh, this is annoying. Also, when I'm typing on the custom instructions, every time I type a letter, it deselects the input. This is part of the reason why I think like using the thinking models is so much better. And also, you can see here how much trouble we're having when we're building with a non-thinking model without... by the way, I don't know, I've just had my microphone moved away, so hopefully you could hear me. The non-thinking models, without using requirement docs, is sometimes it can take a lot longer and you can end up burning a lot more tokens just because you're having to continually tell it to do things. So we're just going to wait for it to update that. So come to AI settings, custom instructions. Right, so I'm putting this onto the thinking mode. Okay. So in the custom instructions in the AI settings, which is, I'm going to give it the AI settings tab. Again, every time I type, I literally click in it to select the input. I type one letter, it deselects it. I have to click in between every letter to type something. Also, I could probably add some console logs as well, but I don't know if it has anything. Doesn't look like it's tracking anything. Safety limits. And what we'll probably do is I want to build in, let's build in next some credit system as well. So can we design a new feature which is going to be the credit-based billing system? And basically what I want to do is I want to use a certain number of credits. Each account has a certain number of credits. So in our database under profiles, we have used credits and usage credits in our table. And what I want to do is I want to have every time I do something. So for example, if a message is sent, right, then we track the number of tokens the language model uses, and then we can add a multiplier on that for the number of credits that uses. So for example, if somebody sends if somebody has a knowledge hub and their customers are sending like 50 messages a day per person, then what I want to make sure is that is tracked in the credits on their total account. So this is going to be account-wide, but the credits are tracked. For now, we're going to track them on our APIs. So for example, at the moment, when they are doing various tasks, like a message is being sent through the API search route, or anything to do with sending messages to the Knowledge Hub, that will use up a certain number of credits. And Also, for example, we want the ability to, when we're actually adding courses, when we add a course and we obviously transcribe it and then we save it to the knowledge base and we do the vector embeddings and all of that stuff, that will also be included in the credit count. So I want to be able to see the credits going down, and that is based on the number of tokens that are used, and then there's a multiplier on that. So it's not just like one course is one credit, because obviously a course could have, you know, a transcript that's an hour long, for example. Can you add this as its own separate feature? Crucially, when you're taking notes on this, look at how the other features work, specifically the knowledge base indexing feature, which I'll add to context, and the knowledge hub, which I'll also add to context, because that's where the requirement docs are already in there that explain how the messaging system works and the indexing works. Okay, let's see what Cursor is up to. Looks like it's fixed some of these issues. So we come back to the course builder, knowledge hubs, come into here. I want to change the UI on that a little bit more. Like when I'm in here, it's hard to know, like between these two, course builder. I think we should have a drop down on course builder. So let's do that now. In the sidebar for course builder, I want it to be like there's a drop down that I can click on, and it will have two options, one which is courses and the other one is knowledge hubs. And then when I'm actually inside the courses page, with the tab that swaps between courses and knowledge hubs, the problem is the view looks identical, and the course builder name at the top stays the same. I want it to, when I'm looking at the knowledge hubs, it's hard to know which knowledge hub I've just been working on. So I want to have like a recently edited, and then like my other knowledge hubs underneath as well. Okay, let's come into here. What's this come up with? Having some issues. Hang on. Okay, so what it's done is it's taken some notes here: scope, feature, account-wide, credit metering, and deduction. So we're going to track on the profiles table. User mentioned existing used credits and usage credits. So here, database PRD. Existing profiles has these credits, so we're going to use those. Events metered, so hub messaging, so via API, search and message. Course ingestion, transcription usage and vector embeddings. Account model. Okay, so I'm just going to tack this on, and I'm just going to add some more context. Let's just do summarize, continue. By the way, if you're seeing loads of none, things like this, we are fixing this. This is just a usage issue. So I want to make sure that we are tracking credits in a couple of ways. So for example, inside the app, when I send a message to a knowledge hub, if we look at the code, we have an API for hub, and there's a folder and it says hub ID session init. There's an endpoint for initiating the session. There's an endpoint for settings, and there's also an endpoint for search. Things like updating the settings for the hub don't need credits usage, but obviously if I have a load of users that are sending messages to my hub, I want to make sure that's tracked, and that those credit metering needs to be done on the hub input. Like when there's the search bar in there, every time a message is sent, it will then deduct credits from the parent, like the host account. So obviously if I own it and I have 10,000 people sending messages, those credits come out of my admin account, for example. Same thing for when I'm indexing and saving things to the course. Whenever I upload something to the course, it will then use the API. If we come into the API, there's a folder called KB, which is process queue, an endpoint for processing the queue. That will need to reduce credits, presumably, but there's also a cron job for processing the queue as well. And there's also a action as well for the knowledge base hubs actions and knowledge base indexing actions, knowledge base actions. There's various actions for these. So what I want to do is just basically make sure that you're aware. You know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to get the GitHub endpoint. So I've got the GitHub repo. I'm then going to come to my project here, and I'm going to add the GitHub URL here and save that. I'm going to come into here and I'm going to say, so this is the GitHub repo. You can use the GitHub MCP server to figure out the file structure. I want you to look at the requirement docs that we have so far. What we're going to be doing is updating the credit system for adding credit-based billing, because I want to make sure that we're adding it in the right places and we know where to add it. So we're going to have probably some sort of function that calculates the credits, and I want to make sure that that is added, correctly. We're not just rebuilding the same functionality across every endpoint, but there's some reusable element that we can use to track the credits. This is going to be on the API there's various APIs. So you can see there's KB process queue. That processes the queue for the knowledge base. We also have a cron job for processing the knowledge base queue. We also have hub, and there's two folders. There's hub ID, session init, and there's also settings. There's also search, which is, I think, the endpoint that we're using when a user sends a message to the knowledge base hub. When that message is sent through, I want to make sure every time a message is being sent through, then it's deducting credits from the admin account. Obviously, what we'll realize is, I have my knowledge base hub embedded onto a website, and I could have 1,000 people sending messages onto it, and if they're sending messages onto it, then it's going to calculate the credits based on the number of tokens that it's used. It's also, it's doing complex things like it's converting my message in with AI tokens into embeddings, it's querying the database, and then it's sending all of those chunks again to the AI to then generate a response. Equally, if it uses a cached response, which we haven't yet built in yet, but if it uses a cached response, we need to make sure that the credit feature uses that correctly. Like, it's not going to charge as much if it's a cached response versus if it's a new response. All of these things are going to be implemented for the credit usage, and you can see the file structure by using the GitHub MCP to read the current file structure. I want all of these things to be like edge cases to think about and add these into the notes, because some of these things we'll have to add later on when we start building out some of the things like caching. Also, things like indexing. When I'm in the course section of the app, if I create a course, it will then grab the transcript, and then it will chunk the transcript, and it will index it into the database using embeddings. Every time there's a language model call, basically, I want to track the amount of tokens it's using, and I want to have, probably in an environment variable or something, to change the multiple, which is probably going to be some sort of little multiple. For now, I'm just going to send that through. There's a lot of information for it to add there. But we've got obviously the GitHub MCP. So it should be able to use the GitHub MCP. And because I've connected this already, it can now read the GitHub and make sure it has the up-to-date information. So I'm just going to let this do its thing. So you can see executing MCP tool, which means it's basically going to read the GitHub as well. By the way, we've added in these little tick buttons. So if you like the response it's giving, then you can let us know, and it helps us make the orchestrator agent better by you giving us feedback on good. If something's bad, you can let us know why it's bad, for example. These MCP tools that it's using is basically reading the GitHub. So it's reading the repository, which means it has a little bit of up-to-date context on how the code is put together. Okay, so what it's done is, you can see here, is I've given it this massive prompt where I've given it CodeSpring, the GitHub repo, and you can see it's kind of gone through, and it says, I've pulled the API routes you've mentioned and confirmed their locations. Here are the insertion points requires plan to implement and reusable credit accounting system. So inside here, handles public search requests, generates query and embeddings. This is where we must deduct admin credits per message. So it's figuring out these are the files that we need to make these adjustments on. This process queue, internal endpoint, the process is indexing, must account for transcript processing. This one, right? Immediate next files to instrument, embedding service, answer generation. So it's found like these lib files. So if we come into here, if we expand, let's just collapse this. Lib files, knowledge base, answer generation, right? Knowledge base embedding service, knowledge base embedding service. It knows what files are in there and the file structure, proposed reusable credit system, and it's come up with some idea for some usable credit system. So just by giving CodeSpring or GitHub repository means your requirement docs are going to be so much more accurate to your specific build. So what I'm really doing here is, because this hub is going to be embedded on like websites, so it's going to be a public-facing thing. When I'm sending messages, if we're calling an API that interacts directly with the database, I want to make sure that it's secure, right? we're sending messages, it's interacting with the database, it's also interacting where it can then update credits on the database. I want to make sure that, you know, a hacker who gets access to that API can't just go and download our entire database, right? So what I did is I gave this full prompt here, you can pause and read it, to the AI to read our code base using GitHub and figure out the best plan. And by adding in GitHub, I wish I'd done it earlier, it makes so much difference. It is like night and day because it knows the full file structure. So it verified the repo structure, public Q&A flow, which is obviously this endpoint. So centralized billing module is going to add this. Want me to proceed with one of these? One, open a PR to scaffold now. Create a design doc. So we're going to create a design doc because we don't want it to actually interact, because it can, right, Orchestrator can go ahead and update things in GitHub, but in this case we just want it to go ahead and create the documents because we'll do it in Cursor. So I want you to not actually open a PR scaffold or update anything on GitHub for now, because we're going to actually build this on Cursor. So I want to make sure that the information is all up to date in the notes inside this bridge node for this feature, and then I want you to create a front end and back end and make sure the database, product requirement doc are all up to date. So we have this proper plan for security to make sure there's not going to be any problems. You haven't put anything in your response about how we're going to manage security, so you know it's not going to be an easily accessible thing, so people can just, you know, hack it basically, and then we'll let that go. Now in these cases, right, you can see how quickly we can get something like this spun up. We could start charging for it, and then you could just bring on a part-time developer to do like a security audit. We are building security auditing features into CodeSpring as well, so it'll make it much easier to analyze it. But what I'll do is I'll hand this off to my developers at some point, and they can go ahead and quickly go through and make sure everything's, you know, safe and secure. Okay, so it's added a back-end PRD engine, and what we'll do is we'll also add short notes card onto the credit billing with implementation next steps. No, I'm just going to generate a front-end requirement doc for this as well. Let's just auto lay this out. You can see just how much planning goes into creating something like this. And again, you know, I know this tutorial is designed to show you how to use CodeSpring while you're building, but just look at how much upfront planning we're doing before we actually go in and start building a complicated feature like this. I was going to start working on caching and those sorts of things. Let's just fix any of these errors here and get that running. Because that way we're going to have because I want to build the credit system in early, because otherwise later on trying to add it in, if we add loads of other features like a chatbot and other things, we want to make sure that we can easily use the plan, or whatever you call it, the credit-based system. So I'm going to save that, and I think let's just add this and just say, can you check the database PRD and make sure it's correct for what we need. Okay, so we've analyzed tables. This aligns with your requirements. All set, reviewed your updated database, product requirement doc, credit ledger and balances to match your needs. So we have the admin balances, credit ledger, flows. Okay, insert update only via service role, API. Okay. Right, let's get back to work. So what I'm going to do now is let's just do commit and push, and I'm also going to come onto CodeSpring and we're going to create a checkpoint as well, because this is going to be quite a big update and I want to make sure that we're going to, you know, not break anything. So this is going to be added credit usage plan, added in a plan to build out credit usage inside the app. Haven't yet built it yet. It's going to be pre-build, so we know. So now we have a backup. If anything goes wrong in here, we know that there's a backup here, and we know that, okay, this is when we push this update with this code base, so then we know they're both aligned. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I've done the GitHub, so that's saved. And what we're going to do is we're going to say we are going to start building the credit engine, and inside CodeSpring, if you actually look at the features, we have a feature called credit-based billing system. We're basically building out a credit-based billing system. I want you to look at the notes and the to-do list that we've created for this to get some context on how we're doing the credit-based billing and how it integrates with our current code base, and then have a look at the database PRD, back-end PRD, and the front-end PRD for this specific feature. My main concerns are, obviously the knowledge base hub is customer facing, and when it's embedded onto a website and people send messages through the API, like maybe the search route, I think it should obviously be using up credits and having a basic credit calculation based on tokens, and then updating that in the database. Now we're using Drizzle obviously for our database. In the profile schema we already have like used credits and usage credits. I don't know how we're going to do this in a way that's safe and secure, because obviously if we're integrating directly with the database and we're sort of adjusting the database customer facing, then we could run into problems with security. I don't want anyone to be able to use the API to access the database and download things from the database if they're not, well, just obviously basic security things. So use the CodeSpring MCP to pull the PRDs and the context on this feature. And then we're going to put it into plan mode as well. And we're going to get it to use basically the CodeSpring MCP. It's going to pull in the necessary context, understand it, and then plan out how to integrate it into our app. So plan modes asked me, like, where can I find the database PRD? I said, let me connect to CodeSpring MCP server first. For the knowledge base hub, how should credit be calculated? Based on actual OpenAI token usage, fixed cost per query. Yeah, I want to do it based on actual OpenAI token usage, because some people could put massive messages in. And also, as like from a business point of view, if you have anything like I've learned with having CodeSpring, I'm also watching Minecraft videos while I'm doing this, is you have a lot of users who do like massive projects, and then you have like test users and small users. The power users will burn a lot of cost for the business, and that's why we have like credit-based usage inside CodeSpring, is because with a project this size, with a lot of this, there's a huge amount of context here that the AI is reading through. I'm using all of the tools, we're using GitHub MCP, all of these things means it's costing a lot on the back end to run, and I want to make sure we have the ability to sort of deal with all of that stuff inside this app as well. So let's have a look what we're saying. You want me to connect to CodeSpring MCP first while you're connecting that based on my analysis in your code base. Okay, so you actually have access to the CodeSpring MCP. There's a whole load of tools. I want you to use those tools, read the requirement docs, and then I want you to build up a plan based on what the requirement doc says, and also based on the current code base. Doesn't look like plan mode for some reason can actually do this. So I'm going to put it onto the agent, and we're going to get it to use the CodeSpring MCP from here. And then once it's pulled it in and saved it in the context, then we'll get it on plan mode, I think. So I'll keep this live because I want to show you what's happening here. Yeah, I don't know why. I think Cursor's plan mode doesn't allow it to use the MCP tools. Maybe it's like a read-only, it's sort of doesn't allow it to have read or write tools. It's just an AI response thing. I don't quite know how their plan mode works, but I like to use their plan mode alongside our plans, because our plans now actually have obviously got access on how CodeSpring works, so not CodeSpring, how our code base works and file structure. And that should then mean, I just noticed that this works now. I forgot we did this. So if we come back here, courses, knowledge base hub, this changes at the top here. It didn't add like a recently last used, but then we can come directly. Okay, that doesn't work, but we'll make it so it does. CodeSpring project is connected, but the dynamic MCP tools get PRDs aren't available as direct function calls in this session. Okay. So we're going to turn the MCP off and turn it on, and then we'll run it again. I'm not sure why Cursor doesn't like connecting to it at the moment. It's just being really annoying. Yeah, now it's found it, so I turned it off and on again, and it's worked. So what this is going to do is it's going to look for the requirement docs for the credit billing, and then once it's pulled them in, I'll swap it over to plan mode and then get it to plan something. By the way, I've been sat here for like 2 or 3 minutes. It takes a while sometimes for Cursor to read all the MCPs and just talk to all the tools, so just be patient with it if it is taking a little bit of time. We are speeding up our MCP, so the latest update is actually a little bit faster. It seems to be more stable, but you will notice that it takes a bit of time. There's obviously a lot of context in our mind map that Cursor's pulling in here. You can also see it's reading the mind map, check for any notes about credit-based billing feature, and look for the database PRD for credits. So all of those notes that we've taken and all of the requirement docs should add enough information for it. So it says, I have enough information from the PRDs and code-based analysis. Now let me build a comprehensive plan. I'm just going to stop this. I'm going to swap this over to plan mode and say, okay, I want you to use the PRDs that we pulled in from CodeSpring on the credit-based usage system, and some of the vulnerability questions I have and security questions I have, and make sure it's scalable. Also, I want to make sure that we have ideally a simplistic system, so it's like one place to calculate the credits, rather than having to rebuild the same thing in every single API every single time we build a feature. I just want to be able to plug it into that existing plan or system that we've created for managing the credits. So like an easy, updatable and changeable credit system. So if down the line we want to change how we charge credits, then we can do. And then we'll just let that go ahead and start planning. Okay, let's look what this has done. And again, with all of these things with vibe coding, just because the AI can just come up with things and build it, make sure you skim read at least the plans so you know it's going to be accurate to what you need. Knowledge Hub search APIs, customer facing, used by unauthenticated embedded visitors. Credits need to be deducted from the Hub's owner's account, not the visitor. The current credit system in credits actions relies on clerk authentication, which won't work for public API routes. Good, because what I've got is in the CodeSpring boilerplate, which is what we've basically built this entire app off. If you come into the course section, this boilerplate here is what we've built this entire app off. If we come into the actions, we have this credit actions, which will only work, obviously, if you're authenticated. It was designed basically for the original version of CodeSpring, which is when I'm talking to messages like in Orchestrator, every time I send a message here, it will then obviously deduct my credits from my account here, and that's kind of why that's there, so we're going to need to update and change that. Centralized credit calculation, single source of truth, token-based pricing, embedding in LLM tokens, secure deduction from unauthenticated API calls. So there's going to be the search and the session initialization. That I think stores and makes sure that if somebody keeps using it, then it basically caches some of the information. So credit calculator, token to credit conversion, credit deductor, atomic database updates is going to go to profiles, credit ledger, audit trail, ledger table. Okay, so we can see that's useful as well, as we can see who's used credits and what they've used it for. So let's just have a look here. So credit ledger table is going to have, and actually in our plan, did we plan this? Database PRD, oops, that's the wrong one. Okay, we need to fix this problem. So I think this is happening because when I talk to CodeSpring through the MCP, these things are vanishing, which is really annoying. Okay, well we'll fine with that. We'll just go off this. We'll fix that problem. Credit engine configuration. So this is going to figure out how many credits to use. So one credit transcription base, embedding base. We can figure out this later on, but that's just like a basic calculation. That's fine. Deductor. Security features. Impotency key prevents double billing on retries. That's what I also want to do, is I want to put in here saying if a message fails, I want to make sure that there's a thing, because the credit ledger, what we could do at some point is we could have a UI in the dashboard inside the app which shows the credits being used, and if a credit fails or if a message fails, then it's not going to take away from their actual credits in their account. You've also got some stuff here, no clerk, authentication required, takes user ID as parameter. The problem I have with this is if we're exposing some of these things on the embedded page, if you look at the way you've designed the architecture, it says credit engine, there's a calculator which goes to the credit deductor file, which then automatically goes to the profiles.used credits. Because we're storing the used credits in the profiles table, is that a safe way of doing it? That means basically from the front end through an API that's sort of not, is basically accessible if you're not authenticated, can then instantly interact with the profiles table, which means we have the user ID, the user email, and everybody's names in that table, which is not what I want. Ideally, maybe we have a credits table instead, or I don't know how we do this security-wise. I don't want it to be like a janky fix. Like, just generally, how do people do these sorts of things? And this is why you need to read through these plans, right? And then it's going to figure out how to actually read the other things. Rate limiting. Also, this needs to work if we have, for example, 100 people at the same time who send a message to my embedded knowledge hub. Then all of them need to be able to obviously hear the response, get the response, and all of them need to be able to deduct the credits. The credits need to be able to work or calculate in tandem or in parallel with hundreds of other users. So it has to be very, very scalable, because this is a customer-facing thing. If we have one client who uses our software who has 10,000 active users and they're all asking questions, that's a lot of strain and pressure on this code base. Row-level security policies. So block, okay, only service role can update inside policy. Okay, let's just send these changes. Existing credits action remains for authenticated dashboard actions. The credit engine is, okay, so this credit engine is going to be public API routes, and then we can use the credit action. Okay. I do want to make sure that the credit-actions file is up to date with this current test. You know, if we're making any of these changes, then the credit actions file knows about it, because we'll probably use a similar credit engine in there as well. Cool.
If I go in and I say really,
so I did some basic updates. I don't know when I started filming and stopped filming, but on the sidebar here we have like a basic credit view, and also in the settings it also is tracking here. Now what I did is I've actually come into this and I added some credits for myself. Now you can see it's added this credits ledger, embedding tokens 11, base fee, like it's added some sort of ledger. And then you can see like this is the message that I sent, but there's been some errors. So it does look like the ledger is working, but the problem is it's not actually generating the responses. So I think it's either an issue with when I come into here, into the knowledge hub, this little drop down helps a lot. And let's just say, for example, how to use Lovable. Right, and I send a message. I think what's happening is if we look at the error we're getting from the AI, it's not actually generating a response, and because it's not generating a response, it's not actually charging any credits, right? So what I'm going to do actually is just on my profile,
and I do this for every single app that I build. But
used
more
credits, I'm going to
importantly,
set that to 0 for now.
Single feature. So it's not just one massive prompt builds one massive app.
I think there's an error that's coming up.
For each individual feature.
Yeah, so it's an issue I think with using the system prompt actually.
And all of these apps look
maybe that's because
did
we save?
All of these apps look really fucking good.
So the problem with working on 3 things at once. So if I just let's just say I set this base system prompt.
If that's the case, can we all agree
save
that the
that?
limiting factor is probably how well you prompt the AI to
yes, there's some errors here.
But yes, in the chat, if you guys agree.
So I'm going to come in here and say, it looks like we're getting some errors with handling the LLM not responding, and I'm wondering it's because when I haven't saved my own custom AI behavior, which is obviously saved to the knowledge base hubs, what it will do is it will save it under the AI settings. If I haven't got something saved to it and it's empty, it's basically just inside the database. It looks like this.
Because this is the thing, I think a lot of people treat AI like,
and I think that's causing the LLM not to respond properly.
They're just missing the fact that
then this is the system prompt that I generated.
They're going to get a really bad output out. Let's get some more yeses coming through in the chat. Cool. So Now you know why it
Hasn't
is
got
you're
any
getting really shitty apps
resources,
that don't
basic
actually
system
work.
prompt,
It's
always
because you're
slightly
not giving it
responsive
the
with the
information
answer to
that
the
you need.
conversation, then
2,
provide supporting details, so
what
it's
fuck do we
custom
actually
system
include in
prompt.
this prompt? Because we know how to write
And when I
story and all
try
of
it with
that.
a
How do we
custom
actually create
system
an app? Because we've never
prompt,
built it before.
if I
Now,
come
put a
in,
yes in chat. Are you guys glad you came along
send a
tonight?
message
Are you guys
again,
enjoying stuff so far? Have you learned something so far already? Is it useful to you? So, what actually goes into making a single high-performance prompt that spits out production-grade
also you can see,
applications
so I've
in a
reset this back
single
to
session
10,000.
without writing a
So
20-page
I've given
document
myself
by
10,000 credits.
hand
I haven't used any
or
credits
messing
yet,
with
so we should
ChatGPT?
see if it
So,
works.
we know
This should
prompting is the most
show
important
some sort of
part.
credit
We
usage.
know that we need to put all that information in. How
Also,
do
my
we
problem
use
is with
that
the
when it
UI at
comes
the
to
moment is
building
this is
apps?
becoming very
Well, first of all,
chaotic.
what
There's
does
a
a good
lot
app actually
happening here
consist
for
of?
people
Well,
to
it has
look at.
features, it has layout, it has UI
And
and style,
I'm not a
to
fan of
describe what the app
massively
actually looks like,
complicated
where
UI and
things
user
go.
experiences.
But also, every app needs to
Okay,
have these
so
things
here,
set
empty
up.
response,
These are
empty
the things that
LLM
make up
response,
a
so we can
good
give it that
prompt,
as well.
describing
Just
how all
copy
of this stuff works.
this.
So remember our old Airbnb phone with
But
our
it
initial
also
prompt?
looks
We
like it's
went in
done
and
some
said,
credit stuff
build
here.
me an
So if we
Airbnb
actually
phone
come
because we
back
were half
to
asleep and we were
this, you can
incredibly
see if
lazy.
we
We missed
refresh,
so much stuff.
there's no
Because
response,
there's loads of
obviously.
features that go into Airbnb. We've got families, corporate events,
Right.
experiences,
Credit
adventure,
ledger.
maps, filters, services.
Okay.
All of these different things go
So this
into making the
is
Airbnb
when
app what
we
it is. Now,
have
caveat here, I don't recommend you guys
used
go out
a
and build something as
save
complicated as
system
Airbnb. I think you need to lower your expectations of what AI is
prompt.
currently possible at. But we all know what the
And
app
what we
does, so we can
really
use it
should
as an
have done,
example.
okay, it's
The
created a new
problem was we
credit
didn't
ledger.
describe how to actually build
So
this
the
app. We
credit
didn't
ledger
describe
looks
how
like
to build
it's
all
used
these individual
5
features.
embedding
So what we
tokens.
should have done is added more
Um,
technical detail, like that story
total
prompt from
credits, it says,
earlier.
is
We should
2.
just pack that prompt with more information, right?
Now,
Just like that
I'm
story
assuming that's
earlier, just like
correct.
that image
We don't
from
have any
earlier.
logs to see
So
how many actual
this is
tokens
the
we're
problem,
using,
because we know
but
how to
2 does
describe an image,
seem,
we know what a good image
sorry,
looks like, we know what a good
5
story
embedding
sounds like,
tokens
but we're
seems
not
quite
technical.
low.
We've never built an app before, so we don't know how to actually describe how to build an app,
And then we
right?
can leave
We're
it there.
just trying to...
Right, so let me investigate the answer. See the issues. Main problems are model name. This looks like a placeholder. No, that's not. The model name we are using is... This is the problem with these language models, is they love to just mess about, and which is correct. OpenAI. However, it doesn't look like we can change temperature controls or some of the other things like context sizes and context windows. So please read the docs for this specific model. And you say credits still get deducted, but when I actually look inside my account, it's not deducting from any of my credits. So if I go to my profile and actually look at my usage credits and the amount of used credits remains at 0. And I think basically the reason it's not deducting is just literally because the AI is not generating a response. Also, even if the AI doesn't generate a response, the message has been sent to the AI. So I want to be able to deduct, when somebody sends a message, there's a deduction in credits for the message that was sent, which is going to be a small number of embeddings and credits. And then there's a credit deduction for the response from the AI as well. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to whack this puppy onto max mode, and I'm going to tag the user credits schema, which actually, now I think about it, that's what's going on. Okay, so it looks like we have a table called user credit schema. Presumably this is part of our security fix. The issue I have is I also have in the profiles table usage credits and used credits. Presumably we've separated them for security concerns. In which case, if that's the case, the reason to have the user credits, can we then remove the credit and used and usage credits from the profiles table? Because actually, in that case, what's actually happening is it is using credits for the sent message, but it's not removing credits for the obviously deducted credits after the response, because obviously the response isn't actually figuring it out, right? It's not getting a response. But we'll send that off and let that one figure it out. Okay, so I think let's just go through the response. And this is, at this point, we're starting to get to the realms of having we're starting to get to the point where we are going to have a lot of dead code, and this is quite a complicated feature to add because it's very sort of time consuming to build in some credit based system that is based on the language model calls. So let's just have a look at what it's done, because also we didn't plan this properly with CodeSpring. Like, we just sort of did a basic one, and now we're updating it with Cursor. So fix the credit syncing to profiles table. The credit engine was only updating user credits, but the sidebar reads from profiles. I've added new incremental used credits function in profile queries. Credit sync after deduction. Okay. I think what we want to do is we have the profile used and usage credits table, but if you read the CodeSpring requirement docs, which actually I'll just paste in the chat for you, some of the concerns that I had. Okay, we're fixing this issue. This is what the reason this is not showing up is when I generate the requirement docs here, and then Cursor, the MCP, talks to this, then it hides them. I think it's just a state issue, but it keeps plaguing me. It doesn't seem to be plaguing anybody else's accounts, but it seems to be plaguing mine. The data is still there, but I then can't copy it, I don't think. Why do I copy this? Yeah. Okay, so anyway. CodeSpring requirement docs, which are actually... Okay. So I know we kind of have two credit trackers now, right? We've got user credits table, and we also have in the profiles used and usage credits. Ideally, we don't have two, right? I know the sidebar is reading from the profiles. I don't really care where the sidebar is reading from because we can easily update that. But what I would like to do is consolidate that so we only have one table. Now, if you actually look at our planning that we did earlier, and you look at, if you read the CodeSpring MCP and you read all the notes for the credit usage or credit billing system, then you'll realize that basically one of the problems that I was facing, or the fears, is in the credit-based billing system feature, read the note cards, because it will explain a little bit more what I'm talking about here, but it's a security issue, right? The Knowledge Hub, because the Knowledge Hub is going to be embeddable, if I embed that Knowledge Hub onto my website and somebody sends a message and there's an API that talks to, using Drizzle ORM, talks to our database, and that reads directly off the profiles table, then if there's no authentication, it's an unauthenticated API because it's customer facing, right? They don't have to be logged in to talk to it, then it'll essentially, presumably, then it's an unsecure API, then people could just basically just dump the profiles users table with all of the names and emails of everybody, which is not great. Equally, we did then, I think that's why we created the user underscore credits table, and then we just track the credits based off that. But is that secure? And if that's secure, then keep that, and then obviously we can remove and drop those columns from the profiles table. I'm going to turn this off max mode as well. Split credit deductions. So we have now credits are deducted in two parts. Embeddings charged immediately after generating the embedding. Excellent. And the LLM charged only after successful LLM response. So we have input and output tokens for the LLM, and we'll be charging customers based on the input and output and also the embeddings. Added retry logic for empty LLM responses. The answer generation now retries up to 3 times with exponential back off. Yeah, whatever, that's probably fine. It's probably overdone it. About removing credit fields from profiles here. Not yet. I should have just read on. The sidebar from, yeah, okay, current strategy. Isolated credit data for the credit engine, security. Profiles table still has the credit fields for backward compatibility. Okay. Yeah, it says we're syncing to both, so we can remove the credit strategy from here. I'll probably get my developers to have a look at this. I'm not sure about that, but we'll see. Yeah, we need to update the sidebar and any other code to read from the user credits. That's fine. I'm happy to do that. The logs show the model is returning a completely empty response. This could be rate limiting on OpenAI. It's not that temporarily unavailable. Something in the prompt causing the model to refuse. Retry logic should help. For the empty LLM response, I think it's based on the AI settings, right? I think it's based on the system prompt that we've created for the Knowledge Hub. So if you look at the KB underscore hubs schema, which obviously isn't showing. Oh, it's KB hyphen hubs schema. you can see in there we have a table, a column called AI config and AI settings. I'm not sure what the difference is between AI config and AI settings, but the AI settings is basically the system prompt that I've created for that specific hub. Now, if there isn't a system prompt that I've created, then that's fine. We can just default to our basic one. If there is, we need to make sure we're slotting this in, and then obviously I think we have some caching system set up. Which, again, this is part of the reason why you want to learn your code base as it's building, so it doesn't just build the same thing over and over again. Which is API hub session init, I think it is, at root. Right, let's get that going. So I'm going to double check this, but it seems like, you know, Cursor thinks it's fine. Opus thinks it's fine. If somebody did manage to dump the user credits table, they're only going to get, you know, the user IDs, which is meaningless without access to the profiles table. And the profiles table is secure, so we should be fine as long as we don't do anything fucking, you know, weird with the profiles table. We'll build a security auditing feature. But just be aware, right, of how the auditing works, and you know security works when you're building, because you don't want just the AI just to go off and randomly create files and do things. The way a lot of these language models work is they build and they design like something initial. It's like, okay, cool, we'll just get this set up quickly so we can get it working, rather than thinking about long-term effects, i.e. scalability and security are the two things that the AI doesn't do very well on its own unless you deliberately prompt it to think about it. Right. Let's do another test. I'm just dropping the usage credit tables from here. And if we come into user credits, we can see here it says 1,000. We'll give it, well, let's just skip it on 1,000. Used credits. And then we can do how does CodeSpring integrate with Cursor? Put this on light mode as well. I'm just curious what it looks like. So what we should see in here is attempt 103. Yeah, so it's not, for some reason it's not generating the response from the AI, but so it subtracted 1 credit from that. So now we've subtracted 1 credit. Scroll down to here. Did it generate a response? No. It's this system prompt thing, I think. Oh no, it did. Okay, cool. So here, let's just take this response and completion received, that's the response. Okay, cool. Let's take all of this through here, paste it in here, and let's just read some of this so you can see what's going on here. Standing desk. Okay, here we go. The model's fine. This is fine. Prompt. So this is it, right? Prompt tokens, completion tokens, total tokens, 3,938. So total tokens. So we can see the total tokens was 3,938. Reasoning tokens 1,536. I'm not sure what the total token count was, presumably 3,938. From that, we calculated that that's worth 6 credits for that response. Can we just check our credit calculator and just make sure that that's, that is accurate and that makes sense for us? So we've got the credit calculator here and credit. And what we can do is we can come to OpenAI GPT-5 mini costs, and we come into here. So GPT-5 mini input output. So you can see the costs for GPT-5 mini. Input is 0.25, cached is 0.025, output is 2. per 1 million tokens. So for that response, how much did that cost us? And then how many credits did we use? Add that to the queue. So let's just come on to here if we check the account. So this should now update, there you go, 11, right? And what we're updating now is the UI. So this will then calculate, you can see there 11 is calculating off this credits table. That basically means now if I send through a massive message, if I come into the Knowledge Hub, because this is the better way of doing it, right? What you don't want to do is have just like one message as one credit, because if I sent through, how do I integrate CodeSpring with Cursor, and how does the MCP work, and how can I generate requirement docs inside Cursor and CodeSpring, and I send something like that through, we're sending a much larger message, right? And you can see here, just to calculate it, that larger message is going to cost us more on the language model side, right? So what we've done is we've said, okay, that here is 36 tokens for the embedding. So we've charged 1 credit for that. So it's very, very cheap to do the embeddings. But because there's a lot of chunks and similarity and information in here, all of this is being sent to the language model, and the language model is now figuring out a response, which will then obviously charge us a load more tokens. This is calculating, we're just moving over to the new table here is what this is doing. Temp 1 of 3, it's quite slow. So LLM response, steps generated, these are the 7 responses that it's generated. Copy the single prompt from CodeSpring, blah, 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 blah. So it's actually generating a good response. We'll have a look at like this in a minute, because we set up the AI settings so we can have system prompts. They give us the control to make this better. So we'll test that in a minute. But it says LLM charged 6 credits. Okay. Total for this request, 7 credits. So it's pretty consistent. I mean, this is probably because we're limiting this in terms of its size of response, but I don't know if that's good or bad, really. I've got no idea. But it looks like it is calculating it based on the number of credits, number of tokens. If we scroll up here, we can see, yes, it's a similar number of total tokens to the last one, 4,000 tokens, whereas the last one was 3,900, so the calculation comes out to roughly 6 credits for 4,000 tokens. What we can do while that's loading is we can take this, come to ChatGPT, and so this is the cost for tokens for GPT-5, price per 1 million tokens. Input is 0.25, cache is 0.025, output is $2. What I want you to do is, based on this response here, can you tell me how much so we used roughly 4,000 tokens here. Some of them are obviously embeddings. And I think we're using embedding small, which is cost 0.02 per 1 million tokens, and then 0.01 for batch. How much that actually cost us in dollar amount for those tokens. And then all we need to do is we need to say, like, okay, we can then calculate this up and say, okay, that is one message. So we'll give people, you know, for $30 a month, they could have 10,000 credits, for example. And then that is going to give us a profit margin of $29 or $28 a month. But the good news is with that, right? Yes, that sounds like you're making a huge profit margin. But that's kind of the point, right? Is we also have to think about like running costs of the software, like how much it costs to host it. Also, like traffic, if you're getting a lot of people coming onto the website, which you're going to because everybody's embedding this into their website, which also had like a powered by in here as well. There's a lot of people who are going to be using this, and that's going to, you know, be weight on our servers. All of these things are things we need to consider when we're building, and, you know, our running costs, those sorts of things. So here it goes: GPT-5 mini chat cost, embedding cost total, so 0.02 embedding with 0.01 batch. So if you paste the embedding token count from your actual embedded call, sometimes it's more than 36 estimate. I can recompute it exactly, but your big cost driver here is the overwhelmingly the output tokens at $2 per million. So to combine total is 0.46 cents that cost us. That's actually quite expensive. That's wrong. Oh no, 0.46 cents. So yeah, like $0.004. That's like nothing. So if we classify this as one message, how many messages could people send to our AI? This is like a knowledge-based AI chat for us to reach $30. And we'll just assume that it's the same cost for all of them. Okay, so this is now going to remove the from our tables here. In our profiles, we have the used credits and usage credits. These tables should disappear. And then this is obviously dragging, based on our current thing. And then what I'll do is when I launch this product is, just because I want to get loads of people testing it, is I'll launch it live and then you can use it and I'll figure out, okay, you have 1,000 credits or 50 credits or something to use it for free. Probably just then, because we have loads and loads and loads of people using it, and then I'm getting loads and loads of user feedback, and I can make it better. But also because what we'll do is we'll have inside the knowledge base hub, we'll have a powered by thing. So then it will basically just bring us in a load of traffic. And then from that traffic, we can then get more users using it. And to be honest with you, it's so cheap to run. To use an example as one message, 6,500 messages per $30 of that token. So it's actually not as cheap as I thought it was. If you use space $30, you probably don't want to spend $30 on OpenAI. So we can say in here, okay, so in general, for one message, what we're actually charging is 7 credits at the moment. So for one message, which is about, the calculation we did above, 4,000, 4,000 total tokens, then what we want to do is, what we need to do is, so it's done this calculation here for us, right? It's figured this out. Let me break down the calculation for you. Input, output, total. Actual OpenAI cost, input, output, total. Breaking it down, cost calculation, 0.0045. So it's the same one as what we just found here. Is this reasonable? If you charge $20 a month for 10,000 credits, then 6 credits, your margin is 27 times the raw cost. That's actually typical SaaS products covering infrastructure development, support, and profit. However, if you want to be more cost effective, you could adjust the multipliers. So essentially, it's got input and output right now, but what we could do is we can make this more advanced. We could say input and output per embeddings model and also the chat model. So the embeddings model or the chat model might be more expensive, for example. Right now, I think that's fine because we're not doing any like tool calls or anything advanced with the language model. I'm kind of happy with that. So let's just come back to the dashboard and we'll just leave it as it is. The other thing is, so 6,000 messages a month would cost us, I think we might need to increase it actually. So for example, if I have 5,000 messages coming through from my customers per month talking to this model, that's going to cost me in AI tokens how much? And I'm thinking, say for 1,000 credits, how many people would that basically, how many messages would that track? So for example, if I give people on a free plan 500 or 1,000 free credits, how many messages would they be able to send, and what's our cost per user for 1,000? And how many messages is that? If we have 10,000 credits, how many messages is that? And how much would that cost? I just want to get a rough idea. It doesn't matter too much now. Let's just reboot the development server. Right, here we go. I'm getting bogged down in like stupid things at the moment, but here we go. So based on the example we just analyzed, here's the breakdown. So average cost per message is 0.005, is roughly 7 credits. So for 500 credits, that's 71 messages. Kind of cost us 30 cents. It's nothing. For 100 messages, that's 1,000 credits. So 1,000 credits is going to cost us 71 cents. Like, that's nothing, right? That's fine. I'm happy to do that. 143 messages, which means if you've got no customers at all, like you've got a very small amount of customers, then you could keep using this for free and it would cost us like, $1 a month per customer. So we'd probably want to do 500 credits, to be honest with you. And then Pro Plan, if you gave people 10,000 credits, they would be able to get 1,400 messages at a $7 cost. That's where it becomes quite expensive, because for the Pro Plan, you'd probably charge $30 a month. If you're charging $30 a month for $7, I don't know. Let's go to Chatbase. Let's see what their pricing is. They've obviously got more advanced tools, but the hobby plan, 1,500 message credits per month. We can probably assume that a message credit is one message, presumably, right? So 1,500 messages is 10,000 credits. 1,500 messages is $7 for us. Theirs is probably a little bit cheaper, but don't forget also, right? We'll build in caching as well. So we'll charge. We'll probably figure out some way of charging less if it's a cached response. Scale 5,000 customers a month. Quick reference table. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, cool. We can revisit that though. It's a simple calculation to do. Right. Let's just go to the dashboard and figure out where we're up to, because we've done the credit-based billing system. I think we're going to synchronize here. So we're going to come back to this. We're going to come to the agent. Inside our CodeSpring, we have the credit-based billing system. We've obviously made some updates and changes on how the credit-based billing system works. What I want you to do is, can you synchronize and update the product requirement docs with what we've basically built here? So, for example, especially the changes we've made inside our database as well, because in our database, for our profiles table, we've dropped the user credits and usage credits. And if we've dropped those credits, then we want to make sure that that's updated and reflected. And also we want to explain that we have the new credit ledger, what that does. Also, all of the back-end stuff on how we've redesigned that as well. And then I think what I'll do is, so these will then update with what's basically inside here. And then just to summarize what we've done today so far, we have basically redesigned the Knowledge Hub sort of area a little bit with the sidebar. We've cleaned up some of the UI. We'll fix these little errors in a second. Don't know what's going on here. Just close this, reboot it. We've also worked on the embeddings and the chat response, just improving that a little bit, and the credit system. It's a lot of work that we've kind of done today that doesn't really feel like an awful lot, to be honest with you. What else have we done? What's this planning for? That's the credit-based notes. Caching design. Now, we need to do the caching next. I don't know what the best way of doing this is, because ChatGPT has its own basic caching, but I think I want to design my own. What else did we design? PG Vector and Superbase. Next steps, AI course outline generator. We're not doing that yet. Chat over knowledge base, unified transcripts. To be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure what we've done today. We've done a lot of things. CodeSpring SUB doesn't appear to be connected right now. I thought that we would have fixed this morning, but let me just send this to my developer. Okay, so we'll just rerun that. Basically, it's just because of usage at the moment. The amount of people that are using this app is ridiculous, and obviously if people are using the MCP all the time, then it will keep blocking out. We're upgrading and moving everything over, so that'll fix eventually. I'll turn this off for a bit and then I'll turn it back on again. Sometimes if you just turn it off and leave it off and then you turn it on, it'll work. But sometimes it's like if there's too much usage happening, then it'll kick off. Somebody else is using it. It's a bit annoying. We're fixing it. We are aware of this problem. There we go. It's working now. We're going to update the servers tomorrow morning. We usually update sort of around early morning in American time, because most of our users are in the US, so we want to make sure there's as little disruption as possible. But we'll upgrade the servers, which basically should mean there's less disconnections with the MCP. And to be honest with you, I think really that's it. I think the next plan is, obviously we'll continue planning this. I think what I'll probably do is mostly just some testing and updates and fixes with the current setup that we've got, making sure, if there's something that's not working, like when I send a message, or improving the system prompt system, anything like that, I'm just going to basically firm up everything. We've got the core feature set for what we need for this app, in the way that we can create courses, we can have a knowledge base, we can talk to the knowledge base. I'll probably think about setting up caching in the next video, but between now and then, what I want to do is have the ability to make sure the credits is all doing it correctly, and there's as little problems as possible. I'll probably try and figure out what sort of tests we can run, and edge cases that we might have, and then we can try and figure out like fixes for those. So then when we continue developing, basically we're not breaking anything, right? I'm just going to also collapse all of these. Because then if we come down to these, so we should see V1, V1, and V1. These ones should update. We're making the UI better, so you'll be able to see which things have actually updated down the line. But basically then it's, okay, make sure everything we have is pretty good, and I want to go through and do a bit of a code audit, so I'll get Orchestrator to sort of have a look at what we've got through our current plans, and have a look at GitHub and see what file structure we've got, and if it thinks there's any sort of files that are bloated. And then what I'll do is I'll go through with Cursor and try and see what I can cut down and make it easier. And what we might consider doing is moving to Claude Code at some point. The reason being, we are actually starting to push quite a lot of usage through Cursor. I don't know what we've done today. Today we spent about $30–40 already. It's written 17,000 lines of code today. Like, a lot of work has been done. So I don't know really. I need to do some research on whether we move over to Claude Code, if it's cheaper, if we get more out of it, because $200 a month on Cursor is quite high. It's not bad. Like, if you consider, like, if you pay a developer like $20 an hour, right, or $15 an hour, $200 divided by 15, they would work for 13 hours. So that's 1.5 days worth of work. They wouldn't be able to get to where we have got to in 1.5 days. But giving this sort of thing, once we got it to this point to a developer, is where you see sort of most advantages. So what I did with CodeSpring is I designed and I built the first version, and we scaled it up to like $75,000 a month in revenue on a vibe-coded code base. And then after that point, that meant I had enough revenue and profit and money coming in. I think I hired my first developer when I was about $20,000 a month. Obviously, it's not monthly recurring revenue. We're doing yearly subscriptions on CodeSpring because it gives us more money to invest into developing the platform. But yeah, I'm just going to wait for this to update, and then I'll probably end this day here. And what I'll do is I'll come back tomorrow and I'll tell you what fixes I've done and what improvements I've done, and then I'll tell you sort of like what's the next plan moving forward. Okay, so we're still going through updating each of these. What we should see in a second is these, then we'll update, but I'll come back once that's done. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why we want to synchronize our code base with CodeSpring. So it says, now I can see the current PRDs. They describe a different architecture than what we actually built. Let me update them and reflect actual implementation. So CodeSpring gave us the initial design. It gave us the initial plan on how to put this credit system together, and then we actually made some changes, some updates and some improvements because we had some bugs, right? And obviously that's going to happen. But now what we're going to do is we're going to synchronize and push those back into CodeSpring, so then this is fully up to date with what we have created inside the app, which then means if we want to plan any new fixes or features or anything that integrate with this specific feature, when we generate the new requirement docs for those new features, then it'll be able to read the up-to-date information from these features, right? So it's very, 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 very important that you are using CodeSpring alongside with Cursor like this, and you're sending the information back and forth between the two, because you can see how valuable it is in creating proper plans with CodeSpring and then building it. And obviously you can see how valuable it is then keeping that up to date. If we're going to create new features that are obviously going to be charged, credits are going to be charged from, then obviously we want to make sure that's set up. Because the other thing I'm going to test later on is the ability to, when I come to courses, right? And if I'm adding a course to one of these modules and we transcribe it, doing this transcription stuff adds all of these courses to the knowledge base. And if we're going to add all of those courses to the knowledge base, then we're using the vector embeddings as well. So we need to make sure that we're actually charging credits based on the training for that as well. So it's super important to keep these things up to date. Okay, so it looks like Cursor has finished the job. It says they're all up to date. So what we're going to do is, you see all of these say V1. I'm going to refresh the page. And you can see V2, they're all up to date. V2, V2, and V1 on that one. So the database one's probably accurate. Front end, back end, database, PRD, credit-based billing system. Okay, so maybe it hasn't done the database one, but we can get it to do the database one. But for now, I think I'm going to leave that video here. If you guys would like to grab yourself a CodeSpring account, you can grab yourself a 50,000 free credits when you sign up to CodeSpring on the Pro plan, and all you need to do is use the invite link down below. There is only one invite link that will give you 50,000 free credits, so it is first come, first served. If you click the link down below, you sign up through that link, you will get 50,000 free credits. I will be updating them daily as they get used, but there's only one invite link per day to sign up. Don't forget, if you are using CodeSpring, create more videos like this. We'd love to see you create content on this. You can create your own invite links and invite your own friends, and you can basically get 50,000 credits yourself, and they will get 50,000 credits if they also sign up. So as long as somebody signs up using your invite link to CodeSpring, using a invite link, they pay for the premium plan, which is $350 for a year, £249 per year, comes out to about £20 per month. Then both you and your friend will receive 50,000 credits as well. So make sure you sign up with the link down below. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. Day 6 will be out probably tomorrow, and we'll keep on going through this cycle, and hopefully at some point soon we'll have the first version done and we can start getting free users on, and I'll start marketing it through Twitter, and obviously you guys can sign up and use it.